I had the chicken in the oven and the table set before noon. The quilted tablecloth, yellow and green, was one I'd been saving since my mama gave it to me in 1962. Said it was for when you have your own table to bless. And every Christmas, since then, I've blessed it the same way, with food, music, and the sound of my family laughing across it. But last Christmas, it was just the sound of my own fork scraping the plate. They forgot me. Not just forgot to call. Not just got busy. No, baby. They forgot I was alive. My name is Miss Delores Johnson. Folks used to call me Dee Dee. I'm 82, and I live alone in a little house I paid off in 1973. Brick, red door. The kind of house that holds memories like dust in the corners. Quiet, but always there. I wasn't always alone, you know. I had 3 children. Ronnie, Camille, and little Marcus. Marcus still calls sometimes. Ronnie hasn't called since the Obama years. Camille, she lives 2 cities over but says, traffic's a monster. Like I can't die while she's sitting on I-75. Last year, I told myself, they'd come. I made the chicken with rosemary and lemon like Ronnie liked it. I made Camille's favorite, baked mac and cheese with too much cheddar. I even made the corn pudding Marcus always says is better than anything on earth. I laid out Mama's tablecloth, put out the green candles I only light on holidays, and I waited. The clock ticked, then ticked louder. I thought maybe they were surprising me. Maybe they were coming all at once, like in those Christmas movies, shouting, "Merry Christmas, Mama!" with gifts and hugs. But no one came. By 6, I put the food in the fridge. By 7, I stopped lying to myself. I heated a plate, turned on the TV, and watched a rerun of The Jeffersons. And I cried with the fork in my mouth. You ever tasted your own tears while eating chicken? It's salty, sad, and it makes you feel like you're disappearing, like you could blink and be gone and no one would even notice. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the snow fall slow and thick like white ashes. The street was quiet. No more carols, no kids. Just me and the sound of a neighborhood forgetting its elders. But I'll tell you something. That night, while the snow kept falling and the candles burned low, I decided I wasn't going to wait again. No, ma'am. Because there's something worse than loneliness. It's being invisible to the ones you gave life to. And that night, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in 40 years. A letter. One I never sent. One that changed everything. But that's a story I'm ready to tell now. You know, there was a time when my house was never quiet. I used to step on Legos, doll shoes, Hot Wheels, all kinds of little memories scattered across my floor. My babies filled every room with noise, laughter, and arguments about who ate the last cookie. And I loved every minute of it. Back then, I was working 2 jobs. Daytime at the laundry on Jefferson Street, and nights doing hair out of my kitchen. I didn't have much, but we had enough. Enough to keep the lights on, food on the table, and Sunday shoes clean. Camille, my only daughter, had the loudest laugh you ever heard. A high cracking sound like breaking glass that made the neighbors smile even when they didn't want to. Ronnie was the quiet one, always with a book, always trying to act like he wasn't listening, even when he was. And Marcus, he was my baby, my shadow. That boy followed me like I was the moon, and he was the tide. I raised them with rules and hugs. I made them eat their greens and say, "Yes, ma'am," even when they were mad. We went to church every Sunday. I sat on the same pew Mama used to sit on, right by the fan that always squeaked. The preacher used to say, "Miss Dee Dee's kids don't run wild." And I wore that pride like a brooch on my Sunday dress. But pride don't raise children into kind adults all by itself. And when Camille turned 17, things shifted. She started wearing lipstick to school, staying out late, talking back, and one day, one awful hot August day, she came home with a look in her eye that I knew too well. It was the same look I had when I found out I was pregnant with her. I begged her to tell me the truth. I sat her down in the kitchen, where the smell of cornbread still lingered, and I said, "Baby, you can tell me anything." But she just stared at her plate and whispered, "You wouldn't understand." Understand? I was 19, pregnant, and hiding from my own mama when I had her. I understood better than she knew. That night, after she slammed the door and left again, I sat down and wrote her a letter. A real letter. Pen and paper. Tears fell on the ink, made little puddles on the Y's and P's. I told her everything I never said out loud, about being scared, about wanting better for her, about how love can feel like a cage if you ain't ready to wear the key around your neck. But I never gave it to her. I folded it, put it in a red envelope, tucked it behind a book on the living room shelf, and I waited for the right moment. That moment never came. She left 2 months later, said she was going to Atlanta, just for a while. She never came back. Ronnie left not long after, said he needed space. Marcus stayed with me until he was 30, bless his heart. But even he had to go and build his own life, and I kept that letter, all these years, that red envelope, still sealed, still waiting. Funny how something so small can hold so much love, or regret. And on that Christmas night, sitting alone with my uneaten pudding, I decided to find it. I pulled the books down one by one, hands shaking, heart pounding like I was 17 again, not 82. When I finally found it, the red was faded like old lipstick, the paper crinkled like dried petals. But the words inside, they were still mine. And baby, they were still true. That night, holding the red envelope like it was made of glass, I sat in my chair and stared out at the snow. The streets were quiet, too quiet. Not a single car passed for over an hour, and the lights in the neighbor's house blinked out one by one. That kind of quiet seeps into your bones. I don't cry easy, but that night, I let it out. I held that letter and wept for every Christmas table that had one chair too empty, for every voicemail left unanswered, for every maybe next time that never came. You want to know the hardest part about being old? It's not the pain in your knees or forgetting where you put the keys. It's not even the funerals. It's being forgotten while you're still alive. People think we just fade like photographs. But baby, we're still here. We still feel every birthday missed, every Sunday that passes without a call. We don't ask for much, just a hand to hold, a voice on the line, a little proof that we still matter. That Christmas night, I picked up the phone. I don't know what I thought I'd do. Call one of them? Break down crying? Yell? Beg? But the truth? I didn't even know their numbers anymore. I had them in a little notebook by the fridge, but I couldn't make my fingers move. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I pulled down the old photo albums, the ones with duct tape on the spine and corners curled up like dried leaves. Page after page, there they were. Ronnie with his gap-toothed grin, Camille in her Easter dress, Marcus asleep on my chest, his little fist curled around my necklace. There was this one picture. Lord, I hadn't seen it in years. Camille was maybe 5, and she was sitting on the porch, braiding her doll's hair. I remember that day like it was yesterday. She'd said, "Mama, I'm gonna do hair just like you." I'd laughed and said, "Baby, you already better than me." And just like that, it hit me. I still had her doll, tucked away in the closet in an old shoebox, next to the baby clothes I could never give away. I pulled the box out, and there she was. Miss Lady, we used to call her. Hair a mess, one eye faded, dress missing a button. And in the box, beneath, the doll, was something else. Something I hadn't remembered putting there. A cassette tape, labeled Christmas '89. My breath caught in my throat. Back then, Marcus had saved up for a tape recorder. He went around recording everyone. That Christmas, I remembered it now. Camille singing off-key, Ronnie making up a rap about sweet potatoes, and me laughing so hard I nearly dropped the casserole. I still had an old player in the back room. Dusty, but it worked. I popped in the tape and hit play, crackling, static. Then, Camille's voice high and clear. "Merry Christmas, Mama. I love you more than all the candy canes in the world." I dropped to my knees. You don't realize how starved you are for a voice until you hear it again. I listened to that tape twice, 3 times. Then I fell asleep in the chair, clutching that little plastic box like it was a piece of my heart that had come back home. When I woke up, it was still dark, but something had shifted. I got up, brewed coffee, and wrote letters. Not the kind you write and hide. No. These were real letters, to all 3 of them, honest ones. Raw. Full of pain, yes, but also love, so much love. And I said what I never had the guts to say before. I'm still here. I still need you. You don't have to come back with flowers or guilt. Just come back. I sealed the envelopes and put them by the door. Now, maybe they'd throw them away. Maybe they wouldn't even open them. But I had to try, because the silence was too loud, and I was done waiting in it. But just as I reached for the kettle, something happened. A knock. One soft knock, at the door. I froze. It was 6:12 a.m. Still pitch black outside. No one knocked at that hour. I crept to the door, heart hammering. When I opened it, I didn't see anyone. But there, on the porch step, was a box. A plain brown box, with my name on it. Inside, not food, not a card, not even a gift. Just one thing, a single photo of me and Camille. From that day on the porch. But someone had written something on the back, in a handwriting I knew like my own heartbeat. Sorry it took me so long. Now, child. That was just the beginning. I couldn't stop looking at it. I knew that handwriting. I knew that tilt of the pen on the word, sorry. It was Camille. It had to be. But she hadn't knocked. She hadn't waited. She'd left the box and gone. Why? Why leave a picture and not a hug? Why come all this way and not come inside? That day I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't touch the chicken in the fridge or the pudding or the sweet potatoes. I just sat there, holding that photo, and thinking about all the things I'd said in my head but never out loud. And then the phone rang. I didn't move at first. The sound startled me. It had been so long since it rang I thought I was imagining it. But it kept ringing. I picked it up, and there she was. "Mama?" Her voice was older, cracked at the edges, but still hers. I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't. My throat locked up. My hand shook so hard I had to sit down. She said it again, softer. "Mama, it's me." I whispered back, "Camille." And then, like someone had turned a faucet, I began to cry. Loud, heaving sobs that I didn't even know were inside me. And she cried too. Lord, we cried like we were still on that porch in the summer of '87. "I'm sorry," she said over and over. "I was ashamed. I didn't know how to come back." And then she told me about everything. About how she'd gotten pregnant, again at 19, just like I had. How she'd tried to raise her little girl alone, like I did. How it had broken her in places she didn't know could break. How she'd lived in shelters. How she'd worked 2 jobs just to keep a motel roof over their heads. How she'd gotten clean. Twice. How sometimes, when she was too tired to cry, she'd take out the photo of me braiding her hair and say, "Mama wouldn't quit, neither will I." She said she'd meant to come back, dozens of times. But shame is a heavy suitcase, and every time she got close, she turned back around. I told her what I should have said a long time ago. You are not your mistakes. You are not too late. You are still mine. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about my granddaughter. Her name is Naomi. She's 15, plays violin, likes poetry, wants to be a teacher. And then Camille said something I'll never forget. "Mama, can we come home?" I didn't hesitate. "Baby, you never left." I spent the rest of that day cleaning. I scrubbed every inch of that house. Not because it was dirty, but because I needed to make room for something new, something sacred. The next day they came. Camille had lines on her face I didn't recognize. But her eyes, those were still the same eyes that used to search for mine during school plays. Naomi was taller than me, quiet like Ronnie, but with a smile that lit the whole porch. When they stepped inside, Naomi looked around and said, "It smells like cinnamon in here." I laughed. "That's just years of Christmas baked into the walls." We sat down at the table. The same one with Mama's tablecloth. I had washed and pressed it just like always. And we ate. We talked. We listened to the cassette tape together. And for the first time in decades, there was laughter again in my house. Naomi picked up the photo of Camille and me and said, "You looked so happy." I said, "I was. And I am again now." That night, Camille stayed up with me while Naomi slept on the couch. We talked about the past. We opened the red envelope together. She cried when she read it, said, "You knew, even then." I said, "Mothers always know." She asked about Ronnie and Marcus. I said Marcus still calls now and then. But Ronnie was a mystery I hadn't solved until 3 days later. Because on the 3rd day, the doorbell rang again. And there he was, my firstborn, older, grayer, thin as a rail, but with the same eyes he had the day he first said, "Mama." He didn't bring gifts. He didn't even say a word at first. He just walked in, hugged me like a man clinging to a raft in the middle of a storm, and said, "I heard." Turns out Camille had called him after she left the photo, told him everything, told him it was time. And now, my house is full again. Not perfect, but full. And baby, full is more than enough. Ronnie didn't say much the first couple days. He sat by the window, the same chair where I had cried that last Christmas, and just watched the street. Naomi would bring him tea, and he'd smile, nod, and go quiet again. I didn't press him. Sometimes men don't know how to walk back into love. They think it has a price. But love from a mother? That's the one thing you never pay for. You just receive. One night, long after Camille and Naomi had gone to bed, he spoke. "Mama, I thought I was protecting you." I looked at him and said, "From what, baby?" "From me. From who I became." Turns out Ronnie had battled things I didn't know. A failed marriage, drinking, depression. He said he stopped calling not out of anger, but out of shame. He didn't want me to hear the sadness in his voice. "You always saw me as your pride," he said. I didn't want to ruin that. I walked over, took his hand, and said, "You're still my pride. Broken things still shine, baby. sometimes more than perfect ones. We sat there in silence, hand in hand, and I thought about how many people carry their shame like armor. Heavy, suffocating, but unnecessary. What they don't know is that love, real love, can carry shame too, and clean it off. That winter turned into spring. My house became a home again. Camille and Naomi stayed for 3 weeks. Ronnie stayed longer. We cooked meals together. Naomi showed me how to use her phone. Said I could send her voice notes instead of letters. I told her, as long as you don't erase my messages, one day they might be the only voice you got left of me. She cried when I said that, hugged me tight. I planted flowers again in the front yard, bright yellow ones. Naomi said they looked like hope. Marcus flew in from California after Camille called him. Said he couldn't believe the gang was all together. He came with his wife and his 2 little boys, my great-grandbabies. The house was chaos, beautiful chaos, laughter, running feet, the sound of music playing in the kitchen. It was like someone had picked up all the scattered pieces of my life and laid them gently back in place. And then, one morning, Camille came to me with a question. Mama, would you want to come live with us? In Atlanta? She said she'd cleared a room. Said she didn't want me alone another Christmas. Said Naomi wanted more time with me. Not just holidays, but Tuesdays, Thursdays, lazy afternoons. At first, I hesitated. This was my home. The walls knew my prayers. The floors creaked with my history. But then I looked around, and I saw not a house filled with people, but a life being passed forward. Mama, Camille said, this house made us, but we need you, not the bricks. I agreed. We packed my things slowly. I left behind a lot, but not the photo, not the tape, not the red envelope, and not Mama's tablecloth. That tablecloth came with me, because one day, Naomi will have her own table. And I want her to lay it down, touch the stitching, and remember that her grandmother, once forgotten, became unforgettable. We moved in April. Atlanta's warmer, louder. But there's room for me. Room in their house, in their lives, in their plans. Last Christmas? We cooked together. Camille made the chicken. Naomi made the pudding. I just watched and smiled. They set the table with Mama's cloth. Ronnie flew in. Marcus called in over video chat. We played that cassette tape, just like we did that first night she came back. And then, Naomi stood up. She said she had a poem to read. Wrote it herself. She called it The Christmas She Waited. She read it slow, proud, her voice trembling, at the end. And I cried, not from sadness, not even from joy, but from recognition, because I was seen. Not just as the matriarch, not just as the one who held it together, but as a woman, as a soul, as someone who never gave up, even when the world forgot her name. And before we ate, Camille took my hand and said, "This is your legacy, Mama. Not what we forgot, but what we remembered just in time." And baby, I believed her. I still do. Because sometimes the people who forget you, they come back. Sometimes the pain becomes the reason they remember. And sometimes the table gets full again. And full, I've learned, is more than enough.
Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel and stay with us for the next story. It's already waiting for you on the screen. Because every story told by a grandmother carries the strength of generations. Click and keep listening. We'll be right here.